Code Everything.
Hey guys, today in this episode of Behind the Code, we interview Cassidy. Cassidy is a senior software engineer. She's worked at a lot of great companies, Venmo, Microsoft, HackerFund, Intuit. She's done a lot of cool stuff. We go all the way back to when she was in college and got her internships at General Mills and Microsoft, to when she was being a developer evangelist, a tech evangelist. One of the best things was not only being able to pick her brain about, as someone who hires junior devs and what they're looking for when they interview them, but also just to get the passion across. I felt very motivated just talking to someone who is as passionate, if not more passionate, than myself. I hope you guys enjoy this video. You know what? I know you'll enjoy this video. I had a great time talking with her. Thanks for watching. Okay, perfect. Would you mind introducing yourself for everybody?
Sure. So my name is Cassidy Williams. I'm a senior software engineer in Seattle at L4 Digital, which is a creative agency in the city. And before that, I was a software engineer and developer evangelist at Clarify in New York City, and before that at Venmo. And then before that, I was in school at Iowa State University.
Yeah, very, very impressive. What is an evangelist for people who don't know? What is their role?
A developer evangelist is one who, so evangelist is in the title and people are always like, what does that mean? It is kind of a combination of developing and marketing, where you go to a lot of hackathons and conferences and meetups and do a lot of speaking about a given technology, whether it be for your company or just for a given technology in general. You write a lot of tutorials, you mentor developers, you help people integrate X technology into their projects, and yeah, it's kind of a very grassroots, fun way to be involved in the developer community and use kind of multiple areas of your brain as you're both coding demos and different projects and helping people with theirs, as well as writing and speaking and mentoring people. Nice.
Now, is that something that kind of, because I see that you have your own social media going, you have, you're verified on Twitter, and if I saw here on your LinkedIn, you got ranked one of the 35 women under 35 who are changing the tech industry. That seems pretty impressive. Is that kind of, did that role lead you there, or did those sort of like building up your social media help you out in that role?
I'd say it's a combination of both. For the 35 under 35 thing, that was with Glamour magazine, and they did reach out to me on Twitter, so there's that. But it was as a result of just being involved in the developer community and just building good community spaces out there for developers, which is really fun. It's one of my favorite things to do, bringing developers together to make cool things.
Yeah, I wish. That's one role that I'm thinking like a couple of years from now, I may try and jump into, because just kind of liking social media and coding, and I like interviewing developers. I think it might be a good role for me down the road. So it's something that I'm always interested in, but I don't think it gets enough attention sometimes. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, you just have to code and there's nothing else. And so it's one of the cooler roles in my opinion.
Right. Oh, it's such a cool role. And I do think that everybody should try it. Even if it's just for a few months or something at a new role. I think it's a really good way to not only just, again, use different sides of your brain, but you also get a real user perspective from developers themselves. And so, for example, if you're building an API, if you do that type of developer evangelism work, you get to see developers use your API, see exactly where they tend to have trouble, so you can refine your tutorials or your documentation. And it's kind of like developer-focused user testing almost, and it's not only interesting, but it's also just a really good learning experience and fun.
Nice. So I also see that you've worked at HackerFund, which I have interviewed somebody else who worked at HackerFund, who now works at a company called Ernie. His name is eluding me right now. Oh, I was going to ask if you knew him, but I forgot his name all of a sudden. But that's a whole different story.
I probably do, but I don't recognize that company name so much.
Oh, you don't recognize the company name?
I recognize HackerFund, but not where I went to.
Okay. I was like, that's strange.
Really? Yeah.
How was your time working at Venmo? Because Venmo, I would imagine, has a very large team of developers.
Venmo was great. I was, let's see, I was definitely less than 100 employees when I worked there. I think it was around employee 50 or so. And so it was still young, but it had just been bought by PayPal. I think PayPal literally bought it like the week after I signed my offer letter. And Venmo was great. I absolutely loved it. The people there were so fun. We made like music videos in the office, and the office is absolutely wonderful. And you know, typical tech perks like free food and like there's a gym in the office. But Venmo was really interesting because I did both back end and front end programming there, and so I got to just play a lot with the Venmo API, both like internally and externally, as I did dev evangelism at hackathons. And then I got to just work on some really fun tools. And there's all kinds of fun little features within Venmo that, like for example, emoji autocomplete, and that's a feature that some people know about. If you type the word brunch, a couple emojis pull up. But that's such a fun feature where I didn't build the feature itself, but it was a very collaborative feature because the developer that put it together had all of the employees name all the different emojis. And so, for example, if you type the word turd, the poop emoji shows up, and that's me. And, so there's all kinds of just fun and interesting stories that came out of Venmo. And I do think that fintech, just financial tech in general, is a very interesting field that people should explore. But yeah, Venmo was really cool. I enjoyed my time there a ton.
Now, what is your stance on fintech? Because it seems for me, as someone who kind of I get ads bombed on me for fintech apps like all the time. Now, is this something that you think is like eventually is going to die down, or you think there's a very strong future for this sort of genre of applications and development?
I mean, I don't think it's going away. People will always use money. And so, and there's so many old applications of money. People are still using cash as much as apps like Venmo and PayPal and Square Cash and all these things. People are still using paper money and writing paper checks and everything. And there is value in that, but people will always be advancing technology all the time. And so the tech or the finance industry should keep up with that. And I don't think that's going anywhere. That's not going anywhere anytime quickly. But I do think that there might be some big players that end up taking over the market here and there, and then someone fresh and new will come, as you know, capitalism says it will. But yeah, I think we will always be bombarded with those ads because there will always be those apps. But there's a lot still to be discovered and learned and built. So yeah, I think fintech is people think it's boring, but it's actually very interesting because it affects everybody.
Yeah, it's one of the, like, I'm one of those developers that I don't really care what company I work at. I just want to code. And like maybe after I get a couple more years experience, that will change. But fintech is one of the areas I would also be interested in, just because I happen to like analytics. And I think there would be a ton of analytics that go along with that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, big data, following around analytics and seeing trends and buying. And then also there's just new technologies. There's still, Bitcoin is still a thing, and it's up higher than ever, I think. And the blockchain, and seeing how that can regulate and change how we spend money. It's all very interesting, and it's all still very new. So
it's funny that you mentioned blockchain, because I just interviewed the CEO of a startup called Library, which basically uses blockchain. It's like a blockchain-based YouTube where no longer is it on servers. I don't fully understand the concept, but that's kind of the premise behind it. And you can sell your content or put it up for free. So it's interesting that you bring that up. And I'm interested like 3 to 4 years to see if they're still around. I hope they are.
I'm fascinated by blockchain. I also don't fully understand it. My fiance, he worked at a Bitcoin-focused company, and when he would start talking about blockchain, I could feel my eyes glazing over, as there are so many different aspects of it. But it's an interesting technology for sure.
Yeah, I found myself keep on going back to the idea that it's like a torrent system, but I kept on getting told that it's not. So I really do not have any idea how it works.
Yeah, it is not. And I couldn't explain it to you well if I tried, so I'm not going to. But it is interesting. Every time I learn more, I'm just like, had no idea. Glad some smart people are working on it.
So I went on to your I guess would be your portfolio site or your resume site, cassidy.co, and yeah. I have to say I love the design of it. Is this something that you came up with?
Thanks. Yeah. I tend to refresh the design of it maybe once every year and a half or so, depending on how motivated I am. And yeah, I tend to stalk Dribble constantly for just design ideas and everything. And I like once I see a few things that I like, I kind of try to combine them in my head over time. And once I have a good idea in my head, I just kind of go for it. Yeah, I came for myself.
For people who aren't, obviously we're talking about, it basically looks like almost like patch notes to a application where you can expand. You have the change log about, major career / sort of life events that have, are helpful for your success. Just kind of showcase that. I think it's very creative. I like it a lot.
Thanks.
So let's jump back a little bit to the past. And I see that you have 3 internships, one with General Mills, a company called Priority 5, and Microsoft. Now, getting an internship at Microsoft must have been how was that process? Was it a hard process, a long process?
I mean, tech internships tend to always be long processes. I actually had more internships than those, but Priority 5, that I'll just iterate through them really quickly. Priority 5 was a startup near my campus in the Iowa State University Research Park. And they did a lot of defense contracting and just interesting work with Amtrak and the government and a few other things. And there it was all just software testing. And it was kind of my first foot in the door in the world of software testing. I'd never done it before. It was my first internship. And I did that part-time throughout my freshman and half of sophomore year. Which was a very fun job. They posted a job posting to my school, and I was like, sure, I'll try it, and got the gig after talking with them. And then General Mills was my freshman year summer. And that summer, I was so excited to get an internship my freshman year. I was told by so many people when I got into college, like, oh, it's impossible to get an internship as a freshman. And so I just thought I would try going to the career fair anyway and seeing what I could find. And then I got this one, and General Mills was a blast. Not only was just like the tech industry interesting because they have sites for all of their different products, but also just a lot of supply chain focused technology because they're a food company and they need to get food shipped to stores and they need to have a lot of things done under the hood to have them be a well-oiled machine. And so that was really interesting. And there was so much free food. It was awesome. I had Dunkaroos all the time. They had like a company grocery store where you could get things for really cheap because they're General Mills products. It was great. And then my sophomore year to get my internship at Microsoft, that was a very stressful semester. So my second half of sophomore year, I was studying abroad in Spain. And so I wanted to get all interviews and everything done my first semester, and I was taking tons of technical credits. And my internship at Microsoft, I had an interview that it started with a couple phone interviews and then an on-site interview. And the on-site interview started in the morning, went into the afternoon of just technical questions. And it was really exciting. What I love Microsoft's how they kind of spoil their interview candidates, and this is, I think, fairly well-known knowledge, but they give you like a stipend for food, and so all the interns would pool their stipends, and we would eat at the top of the Space Needle in Seattle. And they let us have rental cars, and I had this like red Mustang that I was driving, and I was just like, I'm the coolest kid in the world. So it was awesome, and that's kind of what led me to Microsoft. And then my junior year was Intuit out in Silicon Valley, and that's kind of where I started to get interested in fintech. And I interviewed with them at the Grace Hopper conference, which is this big women in computing conference. And they just had a ton of engineers there who were interviewing people. And that's how I got that gig. And my summer in Silicon Valley was crazy. I called it my summer of networking because I went to a hackathon or a meetup every single week, at least multiple times a week. And it was great. It was an absolute blast. And these internships kind of, because they were all so different, they kind of guided what I knew I liked, what I knew what I didn't like, and helped me make full-time decisions too.
That sounds like such a blast. I could only imagine. I've only had one real internship, and it kind of sucked, to be honest with you. So I kind of turned me off to it. But I encourage everybody to do as many internships as you can. You'll learn a lot and get good experience along the way. I actually like the fact that you kind of said that people discouraged you from going your freshman year, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily think, oh, people tell me that I don't have a chance. It's like, just because something's hard doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right. There's actually this great quote by Walter Baggett where the greatest pleasure in life is doing something that others say you can't do. And that's one of my favorite quotes, and I try to live by it as much as I can and defy some stereotypes.
Yeah, I know that they probably would have given me the boot if I got an internship at Microsoft, because I'd be like, yo guys, let's all pool that stipend. We'll play cards for it. Let's throw some dice or something. Winner take all. They'd be like, get this guy out of here. We can't have this nonsense going on. This sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah. No, it was a blast. I loved every single one of my internships I had.
Nice. So now that you're obviously a very qualified developer, senior developer, been working with a bunch of companies, do you find time to do any side projects? I know this is something that, like, I feel like when you get started, everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna have tons of side projects, I'm gonna do this and that. Is that something that you do? I
do. Yeah, I was actually working on one earlier today, and as soon as I'm done talking with you, I'm going to continue working on it. I try to do as many side projects as I can all the time, and sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're bigger. My current company, L4 Digital, which is, again, a creative agency in the city, they really encourage learning because they figure if you're learning more things, you can apply that to cooler projects down the line. And so they said, hey, if you want to learn game development, you should, and build some games with us. And so one of my side projects is building games. I have just a very active GitHub where I try to contribute a lot with just PRs here and there, pull requests here and there, and just making things, experimenting with different frameworks. And I'm also really into Stack Overflow and trying to answer a lot of questions and stuff on there. And so as I do that, I tend to find a technology and build something with it. And so I can ask lots of questions and kind of build up my knowledge there too. So I do. It often means I'm working a little too much on weekends and in the afternoons and evenings, but it's worth it. It's so fun.
Well, I have an interesting Stack Overflow strategy because I'm kind of like, I want to build up my Stack Overflow rep as well. And so whenever I look something up or I find the answer, I spend about 5 to 10 minutes scrolling through a couple stacks to see if I can answer any. That's how I feel like I'm giving back. Like here, I think of it as a take a penny, leave a penny jar, but for coding.
Yeah, exactly. Like once I get a good answer, I'm like, okay, let's explore the tag a little more and see what questions people have. And I really want to, there's this one tag or this one badge you can get where if you get like over 200 reputation a day multiple times. And so I've done it once, and but it is so hard to do because that is so many questions to answer. But it's fun to go through Stack Overflow and help people out.
So what has been the biggest challenge about working in software?
Ooh.
Like I know there's a bunch of great benefits, it's one of the most in-demand fields. Most people are like, you get free lunches, I'll do that. That's great. We have a gym. There's lots of great benefits. But since you've been in, it's been 10 plus years or something like that since you've been interning and now you're senior developer, what was the biggest challenge over the years for you being in software?
That is a great question. Wow. Let me think. There have been a few challenges here and there. And so one of them I will say is just keeping up. Like, for example, with web technologies in general, there's a new framework coming out constantly. And every time you see a problem, you're just like, oh, this framework doesn't solve it. I should make a new one. Then you realize why this is snowballing all the time. And so keeping up with things definitely is tough. And trying not to pigeonhole yourself, because if you work on something too much, you do end up knowing this technology very well, but then there's innovations happening all the time, and so you do have to pull yourself and kind of keep exploring, just again to keep up with everything. And then also, and this is kind of a very different angle to it, but just maintaining diversity and inclusion in the tech industry, because I am a female in tech, and there aren't many of us. And at every company I've worked for, at every meetup I've gone to, unless it's like a women in tech meetup or something, it is very, very male dominated, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, if everybody is great about it. But there's this great community in tech. And unfortunately, because it isn't very diverse, it is very geared towards a specific demographic. And so we end up having women in tech events to try to create communities elsewhere and maintain it. And if you don't constantly strive for these diverse and inclusive events, they won't be. And so it's kind of just the constant struggle. There's no rest when it comes to the diversity and inclusion part of it. And that is probably the biggest struggle outside of technical problems, just maintaining, building, and recruiting and retention and all that diversity and inclusive cultures in tech.
Nice. Now, on the opposite side of the coin, if you had to choose one or two things, what would you say is the best aspect of working in software, or just software in general for you?
I love building things. Ever since I was little playing Legos, I've loved putting things together. And the fact that you can kind of create something out of nothing with code is so fun. And like whenever you, as a developer, have an idea for something, if it doesn't exist, you can build it. And I absolutely love that about tech. It feels like very powerful and like just unlimited freedom to build whatever you want. And I absolutely love that. Can't complain about the perks because there aren't many people in tech. The tech companies do a lot to keep us around, and I love that. But also, and I'm going to keep going back to this, but the community of tech. Because everybody is always working on interesting problems that can be applied towards different things, sites like Stack Overflow and message boards and different Facebook groups and even on Twitter, people are posting questions all the time and getting answers all the time, and everybody has been there at some point, and so everybody is very pay it forward and give it back. And I just love that about tech. Everybody seems to be trying to just make cool things.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I go to a lot of meetups, not too many hackathons lately, just because there's not too many nearby. But I can say, guaranteed, that you will always meet one very interesting person at a meetup. As last time I was there, this guy was talking to me about 3-dimensional coding, where we're now coding on an XY axis. I said, look, man, I get you're trying to explain something to me. I don't get it, but I love it. Like, just keep it on.
Keep going.
Yeah. Was there anything that you wanted to cover?
Oh man, I don't know. I can answer questions. I can answer more questions. I feel like I've talked about like internships. I've talked about inclusion. I've talked about fun tech.
Now, all right, let's because I try to get more people included in coding. That's kind of one of the goals of my channel. What are some ways that if people wanted to try and make software and coding more inclusive, that they could volunteer their time or they could help out to do that?
Sure. So one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is that open source is a great thing. I mean, a lot of people realize that, but a lot of newbies try to get in the door by making pull requests on open source repositories and stuff. And there's this great organization called My First PR, and it's just some people who gather pull requests and stuff. And if you have an awesome open source library and you want someone to write a test or something, you can submit it to something like My First PR, and a newbie can kind of get their foot in the door and learn how to work with your software and kind of jump in. And I think that is I was just talking with someone about it earlier today, and I think it's a great way to get people involved by just kind of opening your doors to having people help you with your projects. But for inclusive cultures in general, a lot of times it's just being approachable. There is this thing about tech, which I sometimes am like this as well, where because you feel so powerful with all of these coding abilities that you have and you can make anything, it's very easy to get cocky and arrogant and be just like, oh yeah, this is easy. Not everybody thinks that X, Y, and Z is easy. And so you try to avoid language like, oh, this should be nothing. Oh, this is this is that. Try to follow language where it's like, this is pursuable, or this is more straightforward once you follow these steps, or I got stuck on this before, but now I understand it, I can help you out, that sort of thing. I think language makes a huge difference in how you are able to be approached and how someone might approach a community. And also, an absolutely huge one is a code of conduct, where a code of conduct where people can know that if they encounter someone who makes them uncomfortable, or if someone just doesn't know where to turn, it tells you where you should go if you are made uncomfortable, if someone says something inappropriate, things like that. Just a protocol for that. And I think just having that in place kind of puts people in check, so that way cultures can maintain a goodness about them, because tech is a great place, and working to maintain how great it is involves bringing new people in and helping people stay.
Nice. So talk about bringing people in as a senior developer. It's different at every workplace, but at my past couple workplaces, the senior developers will typically sit in on interviews, and when junior developers are applying for positions. Is this something you've done before?
Yeah, at my previous company, it was Clarify, which is an artificial intelligence startup in New York. I interviewed grand majority of the engineering candidates that came in the door.
What was it that you were looking for when you would do like? What were the things that stood out most when you were looking for potential candidates?
Communication is huge. I don't want, when I tell you some question, I don't want you to just be like, okay, and then you're silent as you write code on the board, because I don't know what your thought process is. I want you to communicate with me, and I also want to see your thought process. If you are a very personable person who is able to talk about their code in a simple way, where if I ask you why something happens, you can give it to me in a couple sentences or less, that's how I know you know something. And so I want to see thought process. I don't need to see absolutely correct code if I know what you're thinking, how you're thinking it, and you can explain why you're thinking it.
Thank you so much for saying communication, because I tell people this all the time, that especially in junior level roles, you're obviously going to need a skill set, but a lot of times if you can communicate, if it seems like they can work with you and you know what you're talking about, that you can explain clearly and concisely, you're going to stand out. I'm so glad that you said communication.
It's very, very true. And like that is the difference. If there were two coders that were the exact same, the one who could communicate their code the best is the one who will get the job, guaranteed every time. Because nobody wants to just sit in a room silently while someone is coding at you and then expect you to understand what's in their head, because that's not how teams work, and you will likely be working on a team when you join a company everywhere you go.
So when did you realize that software and tech was for you? Was there kind of a defining moment? Did you fall into it, or how did it happen?
Oh man, that is going way back. So I've always liked computers and stuff in general, but I didn't know that being a software developer was a thing until middle school. And so in middle school, I was walking home from school and I heard someone say, check out my website. And that was it. I heard them say, check out my website, and I thought, oh, you can have one of those? And so I went home and I started looking up how to make a website, how to get your own website. And then I just went from there, and started with like a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get editor, where you drag and drop stuff, because that's what I was excited about. And then I realized, oh, if I want to get this website to be even more customizable, I have to code things. And I would just go onto websites constantly and just view the source. When I discovered you could view the source of websites, that blew my mind. And I did it to every single website I could think of, and just read code until I thought I could generally understand it. Then I started to write it myself. And then when I got into high school, I made like a website for my biology class, and then eventually took AP computer science, and that kind of sealed the deal. After that, I realized, okay, this is what I'm going to get a job in doing, and this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, so it was a very random encounter that ended up being very life-changing.
Nice. So if you guys want to ask some questions, please type them out in the chat, and as long as they're good questions, they'll get asked. And no sort of broad question. So you mentioned AI development. How
right.
is that? Are they making the Terminator over there? What does that entail?
Yeah, so Clarify, not making the Terminator, they do advanced image recognition. And so I could take a picture of anything and it would tell you what's in that photo, which is absolutely so powerful. Sorry, I just adjusted my computer. But like, for example, if I were to take a picture of my screen right now, it might say like technology, headphones, person, things like that. But what is really interesting is that AI is a very biased thing, where the person who creates the model, where like if I take a picture of you, it says all of those tags, the person that created that model of recognition created it with what they see in mind. And so the people at Clarify are doing amazing things. I absolutely loved working there. And so they had a general model that had like over 11,000 tags of just things. They also had a food-specific model where if I took a picture of food, it would get specific about the ingredients in it. They had multiple languages. They could tell you if a photo was not safe for work or something. But then they recently launched something called custom training, where you can custom train your own models. And so even though if I take a picture of this and their thing, again, would say computer, man, headphones, glasses, that sort of thing, I could make it say all of those things, only I would say like keyboard specifically. I don't want just technology or laptop. I want keyboard specifically. Or I want to know the layout of my particular keyboard. Or I want to know exactly what color t-shirt you have. And I just want a model specific to clothing or specific to dog types or specific to this and that. And so there comes a lot of power with that. And we had a ton of hackathons. I went to so many hackathons with Clarify, and some of the really creative ideas that came out of it were amazing. Like there was this one app where someone took a picture of something and it would tell you what that thing is in any given language. And so you could learn what things are just by looking at them. And then one of the hackathons I threw was, it was an AI hackathon that was geared towards evil. And so it was we were just like, let's see what people make. It'll be crazy. We got some crazy hacks. And there was one, for example, where they just did face detection, but they connected it with your home. And so whenever you were looking at your computer, it would turn on all of your appliances. But then when you looked away, it would turn them off. And so like your home came alive when you weren't paying attention. There was one that probably wasn't the best. I mean, it was evil, where when you take pictures of food, on the surface, it would tell you all the ingredients, tell you how healthy your meal is. But when you gave it access to all of your photos, it would find the most inappropriate photo on your phone and send it to your mom. And so there are all kinds of evil, crazy hacks, but there's been so many good, interesting hacks. There was a biology team at MIT that were able to custom train different cells, and so they were able to classify cells without needing a microscope. And there was another team where they trained different skin conditions, so if you took a picture of a rash on your arm, it would tell you what it is. And so there were a lot of silly examples and a lot of really legitimate examples, and I think AI is a very exciting field that will be explored a lot more, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because even as a developer, I have no idea how I'd even get started with that. And that really is what intrigues me the most, is that you could be confident in one technology, and they're like, all right, I know you're doing all this Angular and all this web development, but we need you to do this in AI. I was like, look, man, I guess I got to get my 2 weeks, because
yeah, I worked on the website of things, and I worked with the API itself. And if you want to check out the Clarify API, it's great. It's Clarify, but instead of a Y, they have an AI at the end. Clever. But also, if you want to build your own neural networks and do your own AI programming, there's this great open source library called TensorFlow that lets you build all of that stuff yourself, and they have some great tutorials that I recommend.
So here's an interesting question. What would you recommend to somebody who's graduating coding boot camp when they are applying or being interviewed for potential job positions?
That's a very good question, because boot camps are becoming more and more popular, and so you need to figure out how to stand out from the crowd. So first of all, try to understand concepts a lot outside of what your boot camp teaches you. Because yes, your boot camp might be great at teaching you like React and Redux, Express and Node, or if it's an iOS boot camp, that you know how to build iOS stuff. But I've done interviewing workshops with boot camps where if I say I want you to sort a list using merge sort or something like that, people all of a sudden, they don't know what they're doing. And so go through books like Cracking the Coding Interview and just interview practices on like Glassdoor, and try to answer some of those questions that aren't necessarily technology specific, but are tech realm specific, and that will definitely help you. But if you don't want to go that route, which is fine, because not all companies focus on that, but it is something good to know, I recommend just really working on your online presence with technical projects, building up your GitHub. Whenever people apply for a company I'm working for, I always stalk their GitHub just to see what they've been working on. Really flesh out your blog if you have a blog. I've worked with a lot of bootcamp grads where I just say like, oh, you learned something, you should write a blog post about it, just so that way they can build up that portfolio. Not only does it reinforce what you know, but it also shows people that you've learned something and that you care about it. And yeah, those are the really big things. Just keep building up your skills. Don't just rely on what the bootcamp teaches you. Keep building them, because tech is a constantly changing field, and you should keep learning. And yeah, build your online presence, and try to show people that you're actively thinking about different technologies and that you're passionate about it.
I like that you say being passionate about it and like building basically like an online portfolio to kind of showcase your skills. This is something I suggest for people who, a lot of times people go boot camps, they don't have any relevant experience most of the time. So how do you show that, hey, I just spent, I spent X amount of months, but I know I'm confident enough for a junior role. And one of the things I've always suggested is to do, just every YouTube channel is free, make a video introduction of yourself, what technologies you know, and what your most powerful project is that you think will be good for the role. And if you have different technologies, do different videos. But it kind of goes back to kind of the interview. If you're lucky enough to get somebody to watch it and you can explain your code and kind of stand out in various ways, that might just be the difference between your resume getting overlooked versus looked at. And it's really, how do you stand out is the main question, which is you just gotta peacock it. You gotta have the feathers go out and try to be different.
Show everything. Yeah, exactly.
Well, if people want to follow you, where would be the best? Because I know I'm, after talking with you, I'm very interested to see what kind of your future entails. And it sounds like you're always working on cool stuff for the last 10 years.
Cassidy is my username for pretty much everything. CASSIDOO. So you mentioned my website, cassidy.co. My LinkedIn is Cassidy. My Twitter is Cassidy. My GitHub's Cassidy. My code pen is Cassidy. Find CASSIDOO, you'll find me. Otherwise, if you Google Cassidy Williams, there's myself and a Scooby-Doo character, and I'm not the Scooby-Doo character. And you'll find me that way.
I like that, the Scooby-Doo character.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to lurk on like your LinkedIn on occasion and see cool things. So
yeah, thank you. I need to keep my LinkedIn more updated. That's another thing. Everyone should keep their LinkedIn updated, because if you don't do it in a while, it becomes a chore.
Yeah. It's also a great when you're looking for work. So if you get out of that boot camp, just fill that thing out as much as you can.
Tons all the time. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again. Maybe down the road we can do this again. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, and before we turn this into a 4-hour video, we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good day or good night. You're in California, or you're in PST. So
yeah, Seattle.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Have a good one.
You too. Bye. All right, guys. So that was our interview with Cassidy. She is such a better developer than me. It was embarrassing. Very qualified individual, very smart. I love talking to her. Very passionate. That was Cassidy Williams, by the way. You heard her, that you could find her on basically any social media platform at Cassidy. That's CASSIDOO. She very interesting person and very passionate, and it's nice to see a woman in tech who is out there and just like, I think what we can do is being people more inclusive. I love that message. I love that part of my channel is to try to make those sort of stumbling blocks along the way feel a little less like a barrier and just kind of like a part of the grind that you have to overcome. And I loved everything she had. I love what she stands for. Very qualified. And it was a great interview. I enjoyed it. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. If you want to join our Facebook group, Code Tech and Caffeine, the link is in the chat if you're here live, as well as in the description below. And if you like me and you want to support the channel, you can at patreon.com/codingtutorials360. That's patreon.com/codingtutorials360. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you're interested in coding bootcamp, check out devmountain.com, where housing is included in your price of tuition. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.